For decades, Japan's rise looked unstoppable. It was the titan of Asia, with a manufacturing efficiency so ruthless it seemed like an art form. Its lines of electronics and automobiles changed the world so fundamentally that Western competitors eventually gave up trying. It was the miracle of discipline, relentless labor, and innovation, a civilization turning human effort into global dominance. But every miracle hides a cost, and Japan's greatest strength, its ability to rapidly accumulate and value its own assets, became the very thing that pulled it down. What happens when the world's most efficient economy optimizes itself into exhaustion? When wealth creation becomes detached from actual productivity? The pivot from manufacturing to speculation. To answer that, we must go back to the mid-1980s. Following the 1985 Plaza Accord, the Japanese yen surged, and the country was suddenly flooded with cheap money. The government, keen to keep the economic engine running, kept interest rates low. Overnight, corporate Japan, and even ordinary citizens, turned their gaze from building factories to buying real estate and stocks. This was no longer just about manufacturing. It was a race to acquire assets, driven by the belief that the value of land could only ever go up. Tokyo became the epicenter of this frenzy. Land around the Imperial Palace was valued higher than all of California. The asset price trap. This was growth built on speculation, not sustainability. Banks began issuing loans that could only be repaid if asset prices continued their upward trajectory. Everyone was chasing wealth. No one was chasing stability. It was a vicious loop. People borrowed based on overvalued land to buy more assets, driving prices higher in a spiral of borrowed optimism. The market became locked in an asset price involution. Competition that was no longer about innovating better products, but about who could take on more debt and more risk. The foundation of the economy, hard work, was slowly replaced by the illusion of effortless capital gains. The collapse and the lost decades. By the early 1990s, the inevitable happened. When the central bank finally raised interest rates, the bubble burst. Stock and land prices collapsed rapidly. The illusion was shattered. Banks were left with massive zombie assets, bad loans against worthless collateral. They stopped lending, and the flow of money seized up. What followed were the lost decades, a period of economic stagnation and deflation. Factories didn't close because they were inefficient. They closed because the financial system was broken. The machine was idling, stuck in a low-growth cycle because the sheer weight of past debt and overinvestment choked off any future growth. Conclusion: the burden of success. The Japanese experience teaches us that growth built purely on financial momentum is inherently fragile. Their efficiency made them rich, but that very momentum trapped them in a cycle where nobody could afford to move forward. The paradox is brutal. An empire that masters growth eventually faces the test of maturity. Japan proved that there is nothing more expensive than an asset bubble, and that when a system optimizes everything except balance, it runs the risk of collapsing under the heavy, crushing weight of its own success.